G'day guys, welcome to my garage and my latest project. This is a Royal Enfield Model J 500 single that I've just picked up at an auction. I bought it sight unseen, which is always dangerous. I initially thought it was a late 1940s model. Having a closer look at it though, I think what I've actually got is a bit of a mix of parts from different years that someone's put together. The reason I thought it was 1940s initially is if you look at that front fork, it's got a telescopic style front fork on it, which was a 1940s thing for Royal Enfield. The earlier ones all had girder front ends on them. But on closer inspection, I'll just take you around to the front, I'm not sure that this front end actually matches the frame. I noticed when we were loading it on the trailer, it didn't seem to have a steering stop at all. I could turn the forks a really long way. Now if you look, if I take you around this side, you'll see these little tabs here, which is supposed to be the steering stop. If I turn that fork, you see that swing around. Now that should have two little bits sticking out there on the frame for that to strike against and stop the steering from moving too far. Now they're, for whatever reason, absent on this frame. They don't look like they've been ground off either. The other thing is if you look up here, we've got this little tank mount lug on the frame. It's I'm not sure if it's brazed on or it's pressed onto the tube, but it's got this little bolt hole for the tank mount. Now, as far as I can tell, that was a 1930s thing. The later ones had a fixed T-shaped mount that was welded on there. So, it leads me to believe that maybe the fork and the frame don't necessarily match. The other thing, coming down the back, you'll see this little lug here. Now I think that's a lug for a brake pedal. So the brake pedal would pivot there and sort of come forward up here near this little piece where the foot peg would attach. I think that that's a 1940s thing. The pre-war bikes had the rear drum brake on the right hand side. You can see this one's got the drum and sprocket combined on the left. Only thing I'll say about that is I'm not sure whether that's actually a Royal Enfield wheel or not. It could be, but I'm not 100% sure. So what I think might have happened, you'll see this little bolt just here, and there's another bolt just here. So the frame is actually in two parts. You've got this top piece here with the gearbox mount on it, that's one piece, and then you've got this piece down here, that's another piece. What I think they've done is actually spliced together a pre-war backbone, down tube and steering head onto a post-war rear triangle and engine mounts. I'm not sure why, whether it was damaged or maybe those were just the pieces the guy could find. I'm not really sure, but I think that might be what I've got. Some other things I've noticed, if you look at the top of the rocker box here, I've got a bit of a weld repair in there. Might have been torch welded at some point. A little bit ugly, but it seems to be alright. Now this did come with another frame, another engine and another gearbox, so I do have a spare one of those without any damage that I can see. Another cool feature I want to show you. Come around this side, we've got this funky little toolbox. Now I'm told this is a pre-war thing as well. So it's got these little press tabs there, and that drops down and you can open that up. And it's probably can't see in there with the light, but it's just a little toolbox. Don't have a key for it, unfortunately, but I think that's pretty cool. The other thing I noticed is this kickstarter here. I don't know if this was normal for the time, but there's no pivot. On most bikes, kickstarter would fold in when you're not using it. It seems like that's a great thing to catch your shin on walking past. Another thing, it did come with the two cams and two idler gears. Was missing the magneto drive gear that would have gone in there, and both motors are actually missing that, which is a bit unfortunate. I have to do something about that. Also the magneto itself, it would have had a Lucas mag dyno that's not there on either motor. Other thing that's a bit weird, missing push rods. It's got the cam followers in there, but no push rods. So that's another thing I'm going to have to sort out. Anyway, that's this one. I'll give you a look at the other frame. And this is the second frame that came with the other bike. As you can see, this one seems to have the post-war front end, or top, if you can call it that. As you can see, it's got this fixed mount for the petrol tank, unlike that little lug on the other one with the single bolt hole through it. This one's actually fixed in place. It's also got the bigger steering stop, which seems to correspond with the little tabs on the other front end. It's got this little lug under here as well. I'm not really sure what that is. This one seems to be in quite a bit rougher shape. If I go down to the bottom of these tubes, you'll see some quite severe pitting through there. So I don't think this one is usable as it is. I think it would need some tubes replaced. There's also some interesting little repairs on it. If you look at, this is the gearbox mount. Someone's welded some plates in there. It might even be a weld through here as well. I don't know if I can show that. So whether that's taken some damage at some stage, and there's another little, something seems to have been broken off or ground off. Some sort of a lug. I don't know if it almost kind of looks like the little T-piece on that one, but it's attached by a lug that wraps around the tube, which is interesting. Going towards the back, you see this I think is actually a pillion foot peg mount. It should be sort of up about here, and I think it's been used as a brake pedal mount. You can see the spring on it there, and there's another little piece. It's got welds around it. I think it was added later. Something's broken off there as well. So slightly different design side stand. That's interesting. So that's a cable stop. You can see the little cutout and the slot in there, so you can put your cable in. That would be for the rear brake. So, and the drum brake on pre-war models was on the right hand side. So I'm wondering if that is a sort of the opposite of the other one. A pre-war bottom half and a post-war top half. I wonder if the two parts have been switched to get the best bits in one frame. I guess we'll probably never know. So I don't think I'm going to use anything off this one now. I'm not going to throw it out, but I think that might be reserved for something special a little bit later on, and I'll work on that spliced together frame as it is. So just doing a bit of disassembly on the spare motor, the one that came in the second frame, and trying to get the piston out. It's a circlip style piston, so it uses these little clips, one in either side, to retain the gudgeon pin or wrist pin. And normally with those, once you get the clips out, it's a matter of just sort of pressing it out with your thumb. But this one is stuck in there solid. Now I've managed to get it a little way using some sockets and a G-clamp, but it's pretty well stuck. So what I've done, I've got this little bolt. It's actually the stem bolt out of a bicycle quill stem, and it's got the little wedge on the end there, which you'd use to wedge open the stem and jam it in place when you're fitting it to your bike. So the idea is, I found a little spacer, I think came off a kid's car seat or something. Pop that through there, pop a tube over the other side and put the wedge on it and tighten it up. I should be able to drive that pin out. We'll see how it goes. Alright, so the piston's out now. That worked quite well. Took a bit of juggling in the end with a couple of different sockets and using this little piece of bicycle seat tube as an extender, but we got it there. It is important to note that this is a circlip style piston, so this method won't work with the pressed in wrist pins that you find in a lot of car engines where you actually need a hydraulic press to get them out. This was a circlip style that had just gotten stuck, so it is important to note if you're going to attempt this yourself. In the end, the bronze bush in the small end of that conrod doesn't look too bad, but there was quite a bit of play in the piston, so that's probably going to need to be pressed out. And if I give that rod a wiggle, there's quite a bit of play in the big end, it feels like, so that's going to need to come apart. If I give that a spin over, you can see it's really sludgy in there, so I'm not sure if it's had some water in it. Seems to spin nice enough. There's not really any up and down play either, so hopefully the bottom end isn't too bad. So next step, get these cases split. Alright, so I've run into a bit of an issue. Now before I split these cases, I need to remove that, which is the drive gear for the cams. Now if you have a look here, it might be a bit tricky to see. I've put the exhaust cam on there and you can see the teeth are sitting a bit offset, so the exhaust cam is sitting out this way a bit compared to the drive gear. Now if I pull that off, you have a look at that drive gear, it's hard up against this part of the case. Now there should be a spacer behind it and it should sit out just far enough that you can actually get a puller onto that and pull it off. And if you actually look at the teeth here, you can see the wear marks on them. It's worn only on this side. There's a little lip on it. So someone has jammed that on without the spacer and used it that way for quite a while, it looks like. So I'm trying to look at options for getting that off. What I think I'm going to try, I've got my feeler gauge here. What I'm going to do is start trying to work gradually bigger and bigger size feeler gauges in behind that gear and see if I can put a bit of thrust on it and push it out. So we'll see how that works. So there you go, that gear is removed. I had to gradually work up a few sizes of feeler gauge, but then it just popped straight off, so quite a lot easier than expected. Unfortunately I didn't get the whole process on camera, but there it is. Alright, so I thought things were going a little bit too easily. All of those studs came out quite nicely, but we have got a stuck bolt. This is one of the engine mount bolts at the back of the motor. You can see it just here. That is horribly corroded in. There shouldn't actually be a thread holding that in. It's just it's a threaded stud effectively with a nut on either side that holds it into the frame, but it is so corroded in place that I can't budge that. I've already tried a few things off camera which were not successful. I tried pressing it out. It got to the point where I was actually worried about damaging the cases, so I stopped. What I've done is cut off the ends of it, center punched what's still in there. I'm going to try drilling it out. It is hard to hand drill accurately over that length without wandering. That being said, I reckon the inside of that bore is probably in pretty bad shape with the corrosion, and there's quite a bit of meat on it for me to drill the hole larger a bit later on, so I'm going to have a crack at drilling it from both sides and see how I go. Alright, so I wasn't able to get much of that on camera, but I was finally able to get that bolt drilled out. That's the remains of it there. It was properly stuck. Even once I got it to that point, I had to chisel that piece out, and you can see the state of the corrosion on the back of it. It did gall up the hole a little bit, but I was able to drill it ever so slightly oversized and get it squared up again. So I think with a slightly larger bolt in it, that'll be just fine. Well, that ended up being a massive wrestle, a lot of it off camera, but that's the cases split. So sludgy. So I'm going to start getting that cleaned up. That's about all we've got time for in this one. I'll see you next time.